All right, this is probably my favorite row variation. This is the barbell single arm row, and I'm gonna be using a landmine attachment for this exercise. And I'm gonna be starting parallel to the barbell. So on my setup, I'm gonna get into a hinge position, and because this barbell is on one side, I really have to make sure that my abs stay tight, so there's a anti-rotational component to this exercise, because once I reach here, then it's very easy to get sloppy and start to rotate, right? And start to stabilize through the lower back. So I gotta make sure that I'm creating tension through the floor, keeping those abs tight, right? And I'm also gonna be leading with my elbow, right? Pulling back towards my hip, okay? So you're gonna get a lot of lat and oblique contraction in this exercise. This is what it's gonna look like game speed. All right, so this is gonna be the Meadows row. And same thing, I'm gonna use a landmine attachment for this. And what you're gonna notice that's different from most row variations is that the grip position. So as I set up here, it's almost like a traditional dumbbell row, but instead of being more neutral with my grip, I'm gonna be pronated here. So as I pull my elbow back in this pronated grip position, I can actually feel my lat, right, a little bit lower on that attachment point. So this is just another variation. If you tend to struggle with lat activation, this can be a really good exercise. Some people, you kind of just have to find your variation in order to develop that mind-muscle connection. But this is a great exercise for it, especially for putting size in the lat. So from here, again, squeezing that handle, pulling that elbow back towards the hip. You can see no rotation from my trunk. All right, here's a row variation that's probably one of my favorites, and this is one of my go-tos when, especially if I'm doing a chest-supported row. So this is gonna be very similar to the T-bar. You might be thinking this is exactly like the T-bar, but here's gonna be where the slight variation is for this exercise. So I'm in this chest-supported position, and the dumbbells are gonna allow me a little bit more freedom of movement and allow my shoulders to move more in a natural range of motion. Whereas the T-bar, the handles are fixed, okay? And so I could go neutral, I could go pronated, but no matter what, right, I'm fixed in that grip position. So when we're using dumbbells, or you could use kettlebells for this exercise, so what I like to do is start off in a pronated position, and then as I row, right, I'm gonna get that rotation and go more neutral, and then reverse that motion as I go out. So here's what it's gonna look like. So again, starting more pronated. I'm gonna get that rotation as I come up, squeeze, and rotate on the way back down. All right, so here is one of the most typical row variations that you're ever gonna find. That is the dumbbell single arm bench supported row. It's a mouthful, but again, you're gonna find this in pretty much every gym all across the world. So the thing that I see with this exercise, and it's highly valuable, it's one of those things that are pretty much timeless, but I see people screwing this exercise up constantly, okay? So we're gonna cover some things to address, set up position, and how to perform. So again, I'm gonna go knee and hand up on the bench, right? Pretty simple. But I also wanna think about kind of creating tension here. I'm like pushing the floor away, right? And making sure that my rib cage is compressed. So a lot of people will kind of sink here, right? Especially when that weight gets too heavy. So I could gain momentum, but I wanna be able to control the entire range of motion from that rep. So again, a lot of people will tend to shrug here and start at the traps and then try to pull that elbow up. And what happens is we kind of glide up our rib cage. So I want to think about that gunslinger effect and pull my elbow back towards my hip or my pocket. So squeeze and reach, keeping the abs tight. You can see no rotation for my trunk. I'm really thinking about keeping my abs tight here, maintaining a good position, leading with that elbow. All right, this is the barbell inverted row. So if you're on your journey to your first pull-up, pay attention to this exercise, implement right away, and it's gonna help you establish some foundational strength in order to eventually pull yourself up in that vertical or overhead position. If you wanna put on some mass, some muscle mass in your upper back, you can add this to densities, things like that, to get a little bit more volume from that row pattern. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place my thumbs just on the knurling there, and so you can see where my grip position is. My knuckles are gonna be faced up towards the ceiling, and I'm going to push the floor away with my heels, extending my hips up, squeezing my glutes, and then I'm gonna pull my elbows straight down towards the floor. Squeeze and control out. So I want that sort of bar path to kind of pull right up towards my sternum. Back down. All right, this is the TRX Pike Pull Up. You can also use a barbell for this exercise as well if you don't have these handles. If you do, I highly recommend using these as you know, we can really take advantage of the natural movement of the shoulder to get the most out of this exercise. So what this exercise is really used for is, you know, a lot of people just don't have the thoracic extension or shoulder extension to vertical pull from a barbell or from the rings. So meaning, you know, when you get up overhead, rib cage might flare, right? And you lose the tension in your core. So if you don't have that mobility, this is a great exercise to use. And what it's gonna look like is my feet are gonna go up to the box, toes pointed up towards the ceiling. And so you can see that my chest is up a little bit, right? But I'm still gonna be more in a vertical pulling motion, but I'm not going to be so strict to where I'm compromising you know, my joint health. So I wanna make sure that I'm still pulling those elbows down towards the floor. You can still see that I'm in that vertical pulling motion and getting that rotation through the arms. Squeeze, and back down. A few other exercises in this video. I was talking about grip orientation, specifically with the dumbbell chest supported row, the TRX Pike Pull Up. So that's why I really like the rings for the pull up, because we can get that natural movement of the shoulder. And to me, I just get a lot more lat involvement with this variation than pretty much any other pull up variation. And I'm gonna demonstrate it now. And again, getting that external rotation as we come down. All right, this is the band straight arm pull down. I love this exercise for a few different reasons, but one, because a lot of people have sleepy lats or they just never felt their lats before. So when we go into things like a deadlift, they just can't feel them, okay? Or even rows for that matter, right? That's the purpose of this video. But the other reason that I like this video, okay, is more for selfish reasons, and that's because we can really establish a pump and metabolic stress towards the end of a workout with this exercise. I like using the band because there's constant tension with minimal resistance, right? So yes, we can ramp up the resistance, but mainly what I'm looking at is constant tension on the lats, okay? So I gotta be careful with my positioning if I want to achieve that. So when I'm here, right, I wanna start in tension. So I'm already slightly pulling that band down. My abs are tight, I'm setting my position. And then as I squeeze here, right, getting tension and then controlling on the way back up, being careful to, one, not lose tension, two, I don't want my rib cage to pull forward and for me to hyperextend at my lumbar, okay? So I gotta maintain, right, good position, abs stay tight, reaching back to the hips, squeeze, control back up, maintain tension. All right, the T-bar row. So one of those exercises, again, you're gonna find in a lot of gyms all across the world. But again, it's one of those timeless exercises because of, simply we can load this exercise quite a bit and it helps us put on mass, okay? So, it's a guided, somewhat of a guided machine. There are a few ways that you can kind of screw up this exercise, and one of them is obviously going too heavy and getting some hyperextension, from the lumbar. So I want to make sure that I use this chest pad, to my advantage. So what I mean by that is I want to make sure that my chest stays in contact, right, as well as my torso, right, with this entire pad the entire time, right? So at no point do I want to go here and bring my chest up. So again, I'm taking tension to my lumbar, okay? The other thing too is what a lot of people will leave out of the row is that reach at the end, okay? So if I'm in a single arm row variation, right, I might over rotate here. So this pad is actually, again, gonna help to my advantage to let those arms all the way out and protract at the scapulas and then reach back, okay? So I'm gonna grab these neutral handles here. For most people, that's gonna be the case. So again, overreaching, pull the elbows back to the pockets, now. All right, this is the single arm inverted row, and I'm gonna use a TRX for this one. Again, you can also use a barbell as well. But here, what I wanna focus on is making sure that I'm not rotating throughout my range of motion, okay? So I'm going to extend my hips up, right? My chest is up towards the bar, and from here, I wanna make sure, I almost like, almost think about being in a reverse plank position and keeping my arm up here, right? So again, thinking about that plank. So I know that, right, I can visually see that if I come down and I rotate this way, right, I'm probably rotating at the hips. I know that if I come here and I'm rotating this way, probably coming back a little bit too much with this arm, overly rotating and taking tension to my lower back. So just having the visual effect of this arm here is going to expose or obviously correct my form, all right? So again, keeping those hips up, squeeze my glutes, abs are tight, pulling that elbow back towards the hip, control it back out.